Hey, what's going on, guys? Time to start our ZBrush night stream and also grab some tunes. And we can get this ball rolling. So I was thinking we could continue to work on Anton tonight, or we could do something a little bit different. I was thinking we could switch some things up and try to work on just some rough sketching of some basic anatomy or something like that. So I got some anatomy figures on my desk here that I always keep around with me, and I thought that would be fun to try to keep it rough, try to stay with like a low Dynamesh level, something like that. And then maybe after doing that for a little bit, we can jump back on Anton, depending on how long we wanna play in that space. But we got our candle, we got our Contigo full of water. We're ready to go. All right. So I have this dude on my desk, like I said. Reference is super important. I'm probably gonna be just kind of looking at this guy, turning him around, getting some different views and angles, and looking at this a lot. A lot of the time I'll post a reference image up here, but I think for this time we'll just stick with this and see what we can do starting out here. So I think I'd want to start with a fairly low Dynamesh and just kind of start blocking some stuff out, and probably even a lower resolution here. And kind of figure out how to start this. I am obviously doing the male character, I just showed you guys that. So start with the rib cage and go from there. Now when I'm doing something like this, I typically use a bunch of primitives, and I'll just insert them where I need them and then Dynamesh them in. So little things like this for the stomach. So ribs to stomach, and then figuring out the abdomen. And in these beginning stages, honestly, I think it's more important that you do want to focus on proportions a lot, but when you're blocking out, I think it's even more important to focus on just making sure you have all the parts and pieces in there that you are going to need. So obviously the ribs into the stomach, into the lower portion of the body here, the hips, your sacrum, and just kind of figuring out how you want to shape all this. And then just Dynamesh it together. And we can come through here and make a little mask. Pull out the neck. And maybe even move that back a little bit, I think. And again, I'm just trying to keep really low on the Dynamesh value here, just so it's really just a rough block out. Throw on a quick sphere here for the head. We can figure out how we want to have that placed. And let's lower our Dynamesh maybe a little bit more. You can use your transpose tool to do something like this, your move brush, whatever you want, to kind of block out these larger forms. And for a second here, I'm just going to keep these split off from the main portion of the body, just so I don't have to really focus on those having a bad connection there right off the bat. Trying to get a little bit of tilt there in the hips. But again, let's keep moving forward. What would be the best way to pose a full character? The best way depends on what you're using it for. If you're making it for, if you want to rig it and animate it, it's probably the best way, so that you can continually pose it from there. In terms of best way, I don't know if there's one best way. So yeah, Anubis and some other people that are just joining us, we're going to be working on doing just a little anatomy sketching, trying to keep some real low poly count here, just to kind of break things up a little bit. I think it's going to be good to step away from Anton for a while, and if we want to come back to him after this, we will have plenty of time to do that. So just kind of playing around with doing some quick little creation of form, and looking at my my dude here as much as I can. Getting some of these major parts and pieces in. First though, before we worry too much about proportion, it's going to be very important. We're making male character right now, is who we making. Trying to keep that real low Dynamesh while we play around here in the mud to figure out everything. Just posing a character sculpt for animation, only for say a single render. So what I do, if I'm just posing once for a single render, I'll just throw it into Transpose Master, start breaking symmetry as early as I feel necessary, and then begin making the changes from there. So that's what I like to do. As I don't do a lot of stuff for animation, I do a lot of sculptural work, and That's bad of me there. I shouldn't have subdivided my... I'm being bad. We want to keep low here. But yeah, that's what I typically do. And when I'm doing something like this, I like to split things off at least for these real early stages. For the arms and the body. We'll try to Dynamesh it. We're trying to keep really low on the Dynamesh here, just so that we can work on getting everything into position. And not, we're trying to focus on big forms right now. And I really want to work on that. Hence the Dynamesh being so low. Just started using Transpose Master yesterday. Still have to learn how to use it properly. Yeah, if you're wanting to rig, then you're gonna have to create some topology that's good for animation, and it takes some time. And if you're doing the type of work that you're talking about, or the type of work that I do that's all sculptural, there's no reason to do that, as it kind of goes against the natural workflow and work order of the operation and process. So continuing to just kind of duplicate some parts and pieces here. So starting to just quickly build our armature of our low poly figure here. And once we have everything in place for genericizing all of our forms, we can start working on making those a lot better. Posing with clothing can definitely be difficult, but try to think about your character that you're working on in layers. So you can cheat quite a bit of things. If you're making a character for a singular render, you don't need the geometry that's under a lot of that clothing. So if it's causing you a lot of issues, don't forget that you always have the ability to just delete what you do not need. It's totally fine to do that. It's your character, it's your process, so sometimes you gotta just cut it, get rid of all that extra garbage. You can always create your clothing after the fact as well, but then for a lot of symmetrical things, that tends to cause a lot of issues in that regard as well. The reason I always block things out by splitting it up instead of doing it this way is because I'm so slow at doing it this way. So that's our hope as well with this. Not only to break some rhythms, but also try things in new methods and try to get better at doing them. I am someone that always likes to work in primitives. This is kind of like working with primitives, just that my mesh is super dirty and kind of makes me just think about it in a pretty different way, actually. Which is, again, good for me to kind of switch things up here. But we can return to Anton here after we play around with our muddy clay for a little bit. I don't want to bore people with practice. But I always have fun just kind of doing this kind of thing. it's important to really stay, if you're gonna work this way, it's really important to stay as low poly as long as you can. The longer you stay in this low poly form generation kind of work, the better your sculpt is going to be towards the end. And we're using this as a respite from working on Anton to get the gears going in a little bit of a different direction for a little bit while we kind of just play around in the mud, sculpt away, and we can jump back to him here soon. We don't have to play with this too long. I was just kind of wanting to just kind of try something new, as like I said, I typically work with just primitives, kind of blocking stuff out that way, especially for my more stylized work. It's more cartoony. Got a few too many polys up there. It's making it a little difficult to control the shape. This is not a way I work very often, but it's kind of fun. I kind of enjoy it. Just kind of pulling shapes out. Our arms are actually facing the other way. They're pronated. So let's try to do a little rotation. That's beautiful. That is, yes, ZBrush. That is what I wanted. See some more people popping in on the stream. How you guys doing? Glad to have you with us, joining us here for our ZBrush night stream. I'm just kind of trying a little bit of a new technique of just kind of playing around with a singular piece for Dynamesh as I continue to pull parts around and build up form. And if we want, let me actually go ahead just so people can see. Let me find him here. Anton, where you at? There he is. So we'll get back to working on this dude here in a little bit. But I just want to kind of play around with this a little bit longer. Pop, pop, pop. Is my mic popping? I hope not. The people are popping. Now again, another reason why, just in my personal workflow when I do stuff like this, typically I'll like split off the arms, just because there's a lot of issues with the body. A lot of stuff can kind of collide back here, and if I'm working in Dynamesh, it makes it real difficult to make some of the forms that you really want to create. Try to do a little bit of a higher res there for the Dynamesh. These little things like this are great for just doing little proportional studies as well, I think, just to kind of improve your speed and, I don't know, get you thinking about this stuff more. Honestly, this is the hardest part of any sculpt, no matter what you're making. Could be a barrel. Probably not a barrel. Barrel's pretty easy. But for just about anything, those initial stages, those primary forms, are where it's real tough to find your shapes and what you're trying to create. So try to jump around a lot, find those forms, and keep going. And it's fun to just be messy too. And it's best while you're working, not just like this, but honestly in any way, rotate as often as you can. And look at reference. You know, like the measure twice, cut once kind of thing. Maybe not to that extreme for every single stroke, but look at your reference a lot. Trying to find the line of the sacrum right now and do it accurately here. So roughly something like that. And we can even come back through with our pinch brush. Kind of starting to move away from the sloppiness, which I don't know if it's kind of a bad habit of mine. I can't work too sloppy. A lot of what I'm trying to do right now is find these landmarks as best as I can and attempt to use those to create form around. So a lot of people will search for bony landmarks because bones typically don't move. They're not very flexible, and they're pretty much the same on everyone. So using that as a good reference guide is a good place to start. A lot of people do that. I like to do that while looking at just major shapes, trying to figure out really how my surface is turning here. Kind of thinking again those primary forms. Got a lot of random polygroups going on, but we have this major one that I can select here, which is fine from my previous mask. Try to mask that a little bit better, let's say. Let's do something like that. I think a lot of this stuff can be really overwhelming for people, and it's really, which is why I recommend, you know, if you're having trouble, split it up into parts always, but just kind of take it slow and understand that it is complicated. There's a lot going on. And don't feel bad for going slow. Got a lot of stuff to create. A lot of complex forms. Those little feet, that's right, little toesies down there. Turn perspective back on too. Try to jump around and get everything to the roughly the same level. I also like to work a little bit top to bottom, just because the face is the most important part. We haven't really done anything with the face, which is fine for what we're doing here. But I typically will do a lot of work to the face before I do work to anything else. Do as I say, not as I do. My toes will get work eventually. your inner nub is higher than your outer nub. Tibia, fibula, I can't remember which one's which. I think your tibia is your larger one, which should be this inner bump, I believe. Somebody can correct me. Names are only important if you know where they go. Names serve the function of being a roadmap, and if you know the map but you don't know the names, that's totally fine. But if you know the names and not the map, that's a lot worse. I just deleted the geometry on one of my legs just so I can kind of quickly sculpt on the inside here, and then I can always mirror and weld information back over. After the fact. And just mirror and weld that. Not too hard, but that's a nice way so that you can get in between those areas. And then we got a lot of landmarks we made up top that we can blend in and fix more. We got a lot of stuff we can do to this dude. I don't know if you guys care though, but I'm enjoying just kind of doing something different. It's nice to get your mind off your other work for a few hours. Another one of the things that I recommend you do when you're working on a project for a long time is also just take a break from it and come back and look at it with fresh eyes, which is something you'll hear a lot. But working on something else can also help freshen your eyes as you start to look at something else, and then it feels like you're not even coming back to your own work anymore by the time you come back. This shape on my figure is super pronounced back here. I don't think it's normally quite this strong. Normally this is a single mass. Sexy anatomy, definitely not. Nowhere near yet. But we probably won't stay on this long enough to get there. Just kind of playing with forms as we go. Our dude, nowhere near 8 heads, or even 7 heads right now. There's this little fiber that creates this really nice S on the leg called the iliotibial band, and it helps you find that shape if you're struggling. It's one of the things that I search for when I'm looking at that stuff. I sometimes like to use my pinch brush to get that negative pinch there to get a form change. And you can do some cool stuff with your abductors, which is what I was kind of tweaking a little bit earlier in here. So you also end up getting a little bit of an S-curve in there as well. And it's also important, you know, while you're making all these little changes or secondary form changes that, you know, make sure you check your larger forms and you're not screwing everything up completely. Honestly, at this point, I should just like Dynamesh real low and try to continue working those low forms. But I say for the time being, since we've played around a little bit with this dude, I think you could use some work proportionally again with those larger shapes. What we can do is, here's one thing that I like to do. Seven heads, male figure. If you don't already know the landmarks, find one of these. That's a pretty good one. This is from Andrew Loomis, I believe. Doesn't say, but I believe that's the artist. You can see here for some different age ranges as well, proportionally. Something like this can be really helpful, so let's do that. And I'll save the image and just save it in my downloads. And we can import it and I can show you how to do this. So come up into your texture palette, import an image like I just did. Click your texture. So I click texture and then import. It doesn't matter which one. Choose your image and then click add to spotlight. And you can use this to play around with proportions. We'll turn off perspective here. Our arms are not not dying at our sides. So we'll be playing with this guy. He's also in a slightly different pose. From here, what I would do is go into Movie, Timeline, Show. Click on our timeline. Let's align him up a little bit better. Click and drag that dot off the timeline. So click. We'll add one there. We'll line them up here best as we can. Do a second click, and then from the back. And I'm keeping them at the same scale here as best as I can. With the sketch, it's asymmetrical, so it's a little bit harder. But then click, and then you got some nice little reference planes that you can use. And you can turn down your opacity, and we can use this guy here. Start making some changes. So at this point, let's ZRemesh at 5K for the whole figure and see what we get. Just really low poly. So we'll do that. I don't think we're losing much form. Line them up, and our hips are in the right place, right there. But our crotch needs to come lower, so that tells me we'll scale from here. Yoink them down. Puts our knees on a little bit of a better place. Mask out the rest of that. Start to pull down there. Let's shift to our side view here. And we can see how we want to make these changes as well. A little bit thin. And try to use our move brush. And just make some rough little adjustments. Something like this, you can mask it off, move back it proportionally on one part. I'll do that a lot of the time, or I'll use back face masking a good portion of the time as well. And just slowly start to kind of get everything lined up here a little bit better. And this is for a 7 heads tall figure, so really a lot more heroic proportionally. If that's what you're going for, you can play with that. And the way this is drawn, the legs are tighter together, so if you want to make those changes as well. It can be tough in 3D though. You can see he's a lot taller now. We've puffed out his chest and resized some other things. But this can be really helpful for just making those changes really quickly. And let's try to line. Well, let's try to just move that down. There. And take that off and do a new one. Try to play with the traps a little bit. It's more the latissimus dorsi in the back that's creating the width there, so we can look at that as well. Trying to get that little bit of notch there. And something like that, quick mask. And try to pull out our sides. And there we go. So some quick little adjustments proportionally. And then if you want to move your arms and line those up and some other stuff, maybe move your legs and adjust those. That's the kind of stuff that I do typically to just get some quick blocked out proportions so we can get an idea of where we want stuff a little bit better. Try to make the head a little bit better shape there. Neko Hime-chan, welcome back. Glad to have you with us. We're looking at doing some just a little quick anatomy breakdown here. Really low poly stuff. And mainly just using our move brush right now to make some proportional changes. Gonna switch things up a little bit. But yeah, that's what I would do to get a decent base mesh started and continue working with this till I got it to a point that I liked a little bit better. But let's look at Anton next and see if we can make some changes to this dude. And we'll make some more stuff visible. Whew, Ben's neck is not feeling great. And it's 8:30 and I forgot to eat dinner. Oh no. We'll make this one a short stream tonight. I'll go for like another 20 or 30 minutes. And I think at that point, we might as well keep messing with this dude. Keep playing with some stuff here. Whew. Neckaroonie. Not feeling great. Too much looking down. That's why I get real low. It's not to hide from you guys behind my Cintiq, I promise. So at this point, while I'm working, the normal way that I do this is start splitting off your objects into different subtools. And I do that to give myself more control over each of my tools. So removing this head, so I'll step up a couple times and delete lower, and you can do a slice curve. You can use whatever you want. It's not a huge issue. You can even just select the geometry and do it that way. If you want to be a little bit more intelligent with your selections, you might split it at a place that makes a little bit more sense. So maybe something like this. And if you want to clean up your selection, keep playing with it that way. So I'll typically do something like that and select that piece and split hidden. And then this I can, dynamesh separately, close holes, all that jazz. Let's do that here. So just a quick close holes op, and we'll separate our arms out, making sure that we get a nice clean selection there. Get rid of all that junk. I like to get my deltoids on there as well. Something a little bit like that. And polygroup that. So from there, split hidden. And we'll just close holes on that as well for now. For the lower portion of the body, you can split this, so you can do like upper leg, lower leg, and foot. I typically do something similar to that. Sometimes I keep the foot attached, but the more you split off, the better control of your parts and pieces you're going to have, so keep that in mind as you go. I'm just going to try to find the natural break point here as best as I can along the sacrum there, and get the line there pretty well, and mask off all this. Control W to polygroup your, can't stop getting purple, to polygroup your selection there. And I think I'll go a little bit deeper here. It's not too clean. Try to do something like that. Split hidden. Closing holes on this could be a little bit weird just because of the shape of this. So as you see, it's not too friendly with the close holes operation. So what I like to do really quickly is just mask off that face that you close holes on. It'll automatically polygroup it for you, control click it with your transpose or 3D gizmo, click the white circle on your transpose line, and scale in. And after you scale in, you can move it a little bit, and scale in a little bit more. And that'll add some thickness to that geometry so that if you dynamesh it, it's not gonna break on you. Really thin geometry in ZBrush is a no-no. ZBrush does not like that. And then same thing down here. What I like to do a lot of the time though for the lower portion of the body, for the legs, I actually like to split this down the middle. Split them where the Lord split them. Hit you where the, don't let the door hit you where the Lord split you. Never mind, it's not important. So split them and do the exact same thing. And with this operation, it might seem a little unclear why I did this, but with the butt, like what we got here, instead of doing a mirror and weld, because a mirror and weld is going to weld that geometry together, that's what we want to avoid while we work on these. We want to have a really just nice clean separation point there. So what I'll typically do is a subtool master, so Z plugin, subtool master, mirror, and you can append it as a new subtool or merge into one subtool, it doesn't matter. Mirror across the x-axis and do that. And these are two separate pieces of geometry here, so they are not combined there, which is very helpful. So that's typically what I'll do, and I'll work on one leg at a time and continue sculpting on that and do my work that way. I like to keep things really clean, like I said, especially during the blocking out phase. It's really important to me, and it's a little bit slow. It's a slow way to work, but it's the cleanest way possible to work if you want really clean forms. EP, hello, welcome to the stream, glad to have you with us. Just going through, dynameshing these pieces. Here's what I was talking about with the thin geometry. ZBrush hates that. So we can correct that by just closing holes, selecting that face again, adding a little bit of thickness there. And I'll just scale in just so it kind of slots in where it needs to go a little bit better. And there you go. You're on your way, splitting your geo up and getting to work. And you can split it even farther if you would like, but it's totally up to you. So currently I have the arms, legs, torso, and neck and head and all that. So if I was like really wanting to be really controlling of my forms, I'd take off the hand, I'd do the forearm and the upper arm separate. I might even resplit the deltoid. I could even split this under the pecs to really start working on that form, as well as split the lower leg. And so I like to split a lot of different stuff and work with it that way, but to each their own as they go, and try it out if it's something you'd never done before for your workflow. I find it to be very helpful. But this way you can kind of work on form and not worry about, you know, as I go here, the pec inserts onto the humerus, and if you know and understand that, well, it gives you a little bit more control over, you know, I can come in here and individually mask this and start tweaking how I want that pectoral muscle to kind of turn there into the humerus a little bit more. And it also allows you to make big changes rather easily. So, oh, I want to move my arms out, I want to widen my chest, move my arms up, that kind of thing. Tenacious Dude. Tenacious Dude. Are you ever commissioned from businesses or corporations? I have done freelance work many times. That is currently what I do full-time right now. In the past, I've done some work for stuff like DreamWorks, so some Madagascar stuff. Not for the film, for toys and amusement park life-size figures. So I don't do a ton of real-time stuff right now. More all sculpturally based and watertight sculpture. So Madagascar, Shrek, stupid pen, Goosebumps, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Pokemon toys, so some stuff for Tomy and Mattel, as well as a few others. Oh my gosh, this song again. We need to try out a new playlist, I think. Let's see here. And some other stuff. Hotel Transylvania, a couple others. Let's see. EDM, happy, upbeat, ambient, hype. Oh man, chiptune. I always like my chiptunes. Let's try this. Not chiptune, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's the basic rundown on how I like to kind of split stuff up here and start working on just some separate geo. And again, it really lets you kind of have a lot more freedom with your sculpt here. Do you make the first contact when doing freelance work, or do they find you on social media? I have had both happen. More so often if you want a lot of work, you're probably the one that's searching for it. For you to have people constantly contacting you, you gotta be pretty awesome, and unfortunately I'm not pretty awesome. Not yet. So I've never received enough. I've had enough or too much work at times to where I couldn't accept more, but I've never been consistently receiving enough work of like without me actually searching for it. That would be a nice place to be. That's where you kind of want to be, in a situation where you no longer have to look for work. It just kind of comes to you. That's always nice. But that is not my personal current situation. That would be again, that would be nice to have, though. Absolutely. It's kind of the dream, I think, for most people. We've been trying out a new schedule here, streaming, and it's been a lot of fun. We've been streaming twice a day, every weekday for the past couple weeks now, and doesn't leave a lot of room for working on other stuff, but get a lot of my personal work done, absolutely. And I enjoy that a lot. And just getting to hang out with you guys is always fun as well. Hang out, chat, and do work. This is not how I normally block out a face. I'm kind of just playing with planes, trying to do something a little fun. A little planar sculpting. Using my pinch brush a lot right now. I don't have perspective on. Doesn't really matter though. I like to start off. If I'm doing stuff proportionally, I won't use perspective a lot, just because it's really hard to line stuff up that way, with orthographic views in perspective. But if I'm like sculpting close up on a face, I'll typically keep perspective on. Another benefit of working like this is being able to do stuff like this, and I mean normally you don't have quite this amount of control here over being able to kind of just swipe right through there and delete that form, and then come through here and work on pulling down those a little bit more. Same here. Doing pretty much the same thing. I don't know about you guys, but I like working with planes. Just kind of doing some planar sculpting. There actually is a planar brush. I don't use it too often, just because it's so strong. You can see if you find a surface, it'll like, one, you have to get a surface started to be prepared for it. So if I trim that down a little bit and then grab my planar brush, switch back to that. Stuff like that, it's just really, really strong, and I'm not a fan of it. If anything, I'll use the H polish brush, which is pretty similar to the trim dynamic. It's just a lot stronger. That's how I would start, kind of just doing some planar sculpting on the face, playing around with that stuff. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like that's a good place to stop for tonight. I said we'd do a little bit of a shorter stream. I need to grab some food. I need to do that and take care of some other things. Definitely. The past couple of times, I forgot to tell you guys about this. Whew. The past couple of times I left the house, I forgot to blow out my candle, and I just kind of left it sitting here on my table, and I was like, that probably wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done. I need to remember to do that, though. You guys need to remind me. Then blow out your candle so you don't burn your house down, because that would suck. Alright, so, excuse me. I hope some of this stuff was helpful for you. Doing the little reference guide as well. Building up a 7-head figure, kind of splitting some stuff up, and being able to play with that. If you find yourself, the last thing I'll say here is if you find yourself struggling with your form, and your surface is just really lumpy and you can't figure out what's going on, again, splitting it up into parts can help. But what I recommend, come down here into ZRemesher and just drop it really low, like level 1, so like 1,000 polys. This is going to be closer to like 2,000 probably, 2 or 4, so 2,700. Just do something like this, really low poly, and work with your form on this level. This is where you're going to have the most control over your mesh, working on this low poly stuff. And I was saying this towards the beginning, when you're working on something like this, the lower poly you keep your mesh while you're in this phase, the better, because it's going to force you to focus on big forms and big changes, and that's really what you want to be focusing on during this time. So with that said, sign me metal. Talking about some Tenacious D. What's that? It's two dudes. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, Jack Black and I can't remember the other guy's name, but it's pretty funny. It's probably not very funny anymore. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you learned something, and I hope to see you guys in the next stream tomorrow's morning stream. Follow me on Twitter, or just subscribe to YouTube, my YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Don't listen to me. My words are terrible. But yeah, do one of those two things so you know when I'm streaming, and you can come hang out on the next one, ask questions and all that. Closure 3 says, great tips. Well, thank you. Didn't even know you were there, but glad to have you with us all the same. The movie was awesome. It was Natural Jack Black. I don't know what Natural Jack Black means, but the thought of an unnatural Jack Black scares the shit out of me. So, with that said, guys, I'll see you in the next stream. Thanks again for coming. See you guys.